This is AndyTube. In this video, I'm going to show you how to check and, if necessary, reset the height of the presser foot. This is a Singer Model 466, but this procedure can be done on many vintage Singer sewing machines. Okay, the reason that Singer sets a range of height is to make sure that all the presser feet will work, and any attachments like I'd say a button holder that you put on here will work. Okay, and we don't want it below the minimum height or above the top height. And on this machine and many Singers, the height range is 0.290 to 0.300 inch, which comes out to 7.366 to 7.62 millimeter. Okay, that's the range that they want. And I'll show you how we can check this. And the first thing I always do is do a paper slip test. Especially if I hear when the machine is running, you know, it doesn't even have to have a needle or thread or anything, just when it's running, if I hear a little snick or knock, I check to see if the presser bar is set too high. And that's what you adjust, really, is the presser bar. The foot is just along for the ride. Like you know, when you climb a stair, your foot doesn't lift your leg lifts the foot, right? And the same thing here. So you could think of the foot and the ankle of the leg, okay? So anyway, this paper slip test is real easy to do, and you just want to turn the hand wheel towards the front of the machine. Oops, sorry, I'm having trouble reaching it. I got this thing so far away from me. Maybe I can get a little closer here for this part. Sorry. Until the needle bar bottoms out. Make sure it's dead bottom. Okay. Then you lift up the presser bar lifter lever to raise the foot, and if this is set above the factory height, usually what happens is on the downstroke the needle will could hit the presser foot top when you're sewing thick stuff. So this is how you test it. You just take a little piece of like copy paper or notebook paper and you slip it between the two. And if it will slip between them, like, maybe if I turn this a little bit you see, but if it'll slip between them like that, there you go. So we know the foot is not too high. See how that slips right between there? So it could be too low, but at least it's not too high. Okay? Now, I've come up with some different ways for you to do this. And what I tried to do was use coins that you're going to likely have around the house. If you're not in the USA, you're going to have to discover some thickness of coins or thickness of anything for this range of 7.366 to 7.62 millimeter. Okay. And in the US here, these 1 cent coins that we call pennies, 5 of those stacks up to a height of 7.6, which, man, that's great. That is just a hair below 7.62. So with the presser foot up, and I usually set the presser bar pressure low, darning or 1 or 2 like that, And then you just slide these, see if you can slide those back under the heel of the foot. And they went in there, they're pretty snug, okay? But at least we know that's a tiny bit below the top setting. And the paper slip test worked, right? And we can do it again with the coins in there. And it still does. So personally, if I was testing the machine, I'd stop right there because I like it to be at the little bit of the higher end, because I get requests from crafters especially all the time, not so much people who sew clothing, but people that craft bags and thicker material things. Can you raise can you raise the presser foot up about 1 inch higher? It's like, no. Anyway, the other test that I set up is 2 25-cent piece that we call quarter for quarter dollar, and 2 5-cent pieces that we call nickel. And if we stack those 4 coins, we get a height of 7.4, which is a tiny bit above the minimum height. Okay, now these should go right in there. See that? And they're going to slip right through because we already know we're at the top limit, right? But if you can get those in there, you know you're above the minimum, so you're good to go. So this height is good on this machine, and it's more towards the high end than the low end of the range. Between the high and the low of the factory setting is about 0.25 millimeter. That's it. And to show you how much that is, I've got a feeler gauge here, and I pulled out the blade that's for 0.25 millimeter. And look, can you even see that? Ooh, it almost disappears when it's head on. So that's the range. So personally, you know, if you're checking your machine and you're anywhere above 7.366 and below 7.62 millimeter, I wouldn't mess with it really, because at the very most, that's how much thickness you could gain. Now, you know, if you're crafting something and that thickness makes a difference for what you're sewing, well, now you know the high and the low. All right. One last way, and this was a more common way that I used to do this all the time, that way is to use 4 quarters, 4 25-cent pieces. The U.S. Mint website says one of these is 1.75 millimeter thick. So 2 of them is going to be 3.50. 4 of them is going to be 7.0. So we're almost up to the minimum just by putting those under there. If you can't get these under there, you're too low. Now, then I would take a 1 or 2 of these blades of the feeler gauge and put them on top of the quarter. So in this case, I'm going to use a 0.60, and I will just hold the quarters and slip this in, and if it goes in there, see, then I'm at the top of the range, and I'm good. Now I could use a 0.4 blade, or if I could find some combination to make 0.62, like maybe a 0.22 and a 0.40 or something like that, if I wanted to be more exact. But what I found out was not everybody has one of these. Not everybody wants one of these. Some can't get access to them, and some can't even afford them. So I just tried to use common coins here. And I'm not familiar with foreign currency, so you know, you people in other parts of the world, maybe you can find out the thickness of your coins and do the same thing. Now, what about when it's off? What about when it's too low or too high? Now what do you do? So I'm going to go back in here, say with my 5 pennies, and lift this up, and I'm going to slip those in there, and I'm going to show you what you do here is, again, I like lower pressure on this, but you want to, you can lower it down now, because this is holding it up, and this is the bar clamp, the pressure bar clamp. This device it goes through has a tail that sticks out here and rides on top of this, and that's what lifts it up and down. Okay, so that screw is how you clamp it in there. So let me see if I can go this way a little, and you want to loosen that. Now if it's stuck, which it can be stuck in there full of old dried oil, you can try a little WD-40 or your favorite penetrating oil. You can try using regular sewing machine oil. Okay, you can heat it up for a while, like with a hair dryer or a heat gun on low setting, to try and loosen it. But you can loosen it a little bit, and when you do, you should be able to raise and lower it. You should be able to move it. Let me get those coins out of there. See how that's going up and down? Now if it's stuck inside this part, even though you have the set screw loose, you have the same thing going on. You've got dried, gunked up oil in there that's just gluing it together. So again, put your WD-40 or heat, and one way to work it loose after that is to start wiggling the presser foot a little bit, because once you break that grip, then it goes pretty quick to be able to move it around. Okay, so once you get that loose, and then you take your coin system or your combination of coin system and feeler gauge or whatever you come up with to set the height you want, you're going to lift that up and put your stack or whatever under there, and then make sure your presser bar is up, right, because that's the lift, that's what we're measuring, is the height. And then make sure it's pushed down against, and of course then you're going to tighten this screw. But you have to be aware of the position of the foot, because the foot has to be aligned. You may have twisted, with all your manipulating here, you may have twisted the presser foot one way or the other, and you don't want that, because if it is twisted, you're going to be sewing fabric moving one way or the other, and slanted seams and so forth. So the way that you the way that you want to check is get as directly in front of it as possible, and a little bit above, and see those toes of the presser foot. Think of those as the toes, and you see the slots of the needle plate down here. That's what you want to line the toes up with. And that's about the best way I know how to do it. The manuals just say, make sure it's lined up. And some of them do mention lining it up with the slot. So when you give it your best line up there, now you're going to come back, okay, and with the lever up and pushing down in case there's any slack in there, then you're going to go ahead and clamp down, tighten that screw so that you're going to hold your precious presser bar and foot at that height. Okay, and then we can take out our measuring device that we use. We can do a little slip test, paper slip test again. Yep, that's good. Then we can come back over here and say, how did we do lining that up? How did we do? Because with your coins and stuff out of there now, you can actually see, if you get in front of it, you'll see that the foot is a little more narrow than the outside of the slots. So on the edge of the foot here, you can see a black space between the foot and the slot opening, and you can make sure it's evenly spaced down the sides, right? If you think that it's not, that it's crooked, you can either do the whole thing all over again, height stuff under here and loosen this and do it and try and set it up again. Or if you mess up as often as me, you kind of develop workarounds. You know. So what I do is try and have as little pressure up here as possible. I turn this machine, I turn it all the way to darning, which is, you know, really is practically no pressure. Okay, and I'll put the foot down, and then I'll come up, and here's the trick: you loosen the screw again, but just, man, be so slow and just barely turn it back, and as soon as you feel it turn back, turn it forward again until it stops. Don't bear down on it this time. Okay, what we try and do is hold the height. Okay, we don't want it slipping down. Then come and look at your lineup, and hopefully you be able to nudge the foot, because usually even when I'm off, I am just so barely off, and you can nudge the foot a little bit to correct your lineup, and then you can go back and bear down on that screw, really tighten it hard now. Okay, and then I would make sure that you got the minimum height, that it didn't slip down on you, because you know that's going to happen, right, sometimes. And make sure that my 7.4 can still get under there. Yep. Still just a little loose, see? Because it's just above the minimum height, so that's good. And then I feel like I'm good to go. My paper slip is good. Yep. So that's a way you can correct the slant, if you're careful, without starting over from the beginning. Yay. Okay. Thanks for watching that. I did this because I get a lot of requests on all the models. What height should the presser foot be? I can barely get 2 layers of fabric under my presser foot. I know something's wrong. How do I correct that? So I've just started making a check and set height presser foot for every model on my channel. So there you go. Hope that helps you out. Again, thanks for tuning in, and take care of yourself. Hope to see you again.